Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming. I know that Saturday and Sunday are always tougher because we used to go to bed late the day before, but we have two wonderful people here and two authors, two garden authors, each one in his own, her own way. You know Umberto. He's been on the papers non-stop lately. There is a story about him in El País, and there's one about to appear in El Mundo. But for those of you who are not so knowledgeable, are not so familiar with Umberto, well, let me tell you, some years ago, I was lucky enough to visit Tangiers, and I work in garden tourism and garden organization of visits. And some of my friends tell me, you need to visit Umberto. So I visited Umberto's garden in Avenue Montagne. It is a wonderful garden with a gardener that is only devoted to it. And I was so thrilled that I asked Umberto, can we actually go and visit Rohuna to visit your paradise? Well, it is Eden, really. It is. Rohuna is a paradise, some kilometers away from Tangiers, after going by Astila, and with the magnificent Atlantic beaches. And this is why I understand how Umberto, when he woke up after taking a nap under a fig tree, he realized that this was his paradise, his Eden on earth. Well, same as in Caroncho, it's quite funny how philosophy leads you to a garden. Greek philosophy has always been done around gardens, but Umberto is also a collector, a philosopher, and he's an expert in aesthetics, and he is an expert in nature. And a gardener, he is an environmentalist, he is a conservationist about indigenous flora. Well, probably those of you who've read his books probably have enjoyed them a lot. He's like he's an audoral in gardens, and Rohuna has become an important element in his life. It's like his own family. What he has created is not actually a garden. It is a place, and this garden is now part of all Rohuna's inhabitants. Those of you who've read his books, and those of you who haven't, please do so. Probably have enjoyed them. Gardens, those that are true and those that are not. The happiness of the toad, the age of flowers, and now Eden Revisited, that has been also translated into Spanish by the Acantilado Publishing House. I've read it during the lockdown months, and it was a true pleasure. For the American edition, he asked Ngo Minh Ho, a Vietnamese American photographer, to work together with him, and because she had already published a book about gardens in bloom. And she's not so well known, but I'm absolutely in love with her photograph. She was born in Vietnam, in a small coastal town. Since she was a kid, she fell in love with the light, with the changes in light and its effect on nature, and that's how her passion about garden photographs and nature photographs became her passion. She has published in many different magazines, House and Garden and others in the US. She has also published Bringing Nature Home, floral arrangements inspired by nature, as well as other books. There's a sentence that Ngoc said, is a sentence by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince. it says, what is essential is invisible to the eyes. It can only be seen through your heart. In Eden Revisited, Ngoc has taken some poetic photographs, spectacular photographs, where the garden, nature, the environment is captured, and it gives these flowers a magical touch, even mystical. Umberto and her met during the preparation of In Bloom, and that's how Eden Revisited was created. I'd like to say hello to Umberto.
How are you? Ngoc, thank you very much because it's the crack of dawn for you. Ngoc está en Nueva York y son las 4:30 de la mañana. Thank you for being there. As images work as much as words, we're going to project some of your videos and then we'll start our conversation. Vamos a ver las imágenes para poneros en situación y empezaremos la conversación con Ngoc y con Umberto. Ya podéis empezar. Well, thank you for these images. That's lovely. Ngoc, your photos, the last ones were of Rohuna. Absolutely lovely. So, we're going to start our morning conversation. I can't see you. I don't know. Here you are. Hello. Okay. Well, Umberto, caro Umberto, you've been the top of the pops for the last year. You're becoming to be like John Lennon. I mean, every week we've been having wonderful articles on you on the Spanish press. You've been a bestseller. We've enjoyed it. I reread Ed and Revisited, Perdidos en el Paraíso, during my lockup in Madrid, and it was wonderful. I mean, I was transported to Rohuna. So it was absolutely lovely. So I wanted to ask you, Ngoc and Umberto. Umberto, I know you were in Tangiers, in your garden in Tangiers. Ngoc, were you locked up in New York, or were you able to go into the country?
No, I was in New York the whole time. I had an occasional trip outside of the city, but most of the time I was in the city.
Okay, so on these 3 months of, well, in New York, you're still quite a bit locked up. What were your sort of reflections on nature in these moments of change, of pain, of death? What were your thoughts? What did you think about new project? What do you think you'd like to change, Ngoc? What was your reflection from your window in New York during these months, especially on nature?
Well, the lockdown happened just when spring began. So, for one thing, the city completely went into lockdown, and it was quiet. We could hear the birds sing. There was no traffic. We could hear natural sounds instead of man-made sounds, and it was the most spectacular spring. Everyone, I mean, I thought so, but everyone around me agreed also. And I don't know if it was partly because we didn't have any other distraction, and so we were really paying attention to nature. But it was really the most beautiful spring that I could remember. And it was quite poignant because at the same time, there was so much pain and suffering and death in the city, but we were seeing nature coming to life. And it just brought it all into focus about life, really, about the cycle of life and things that we don't pay attention to normally.
Yeah, I think it's
So
been
I
a moment of great reflection for all of us. And Umberto, you were trapped in your garden, and not in Rohuna, unfortunately for you, but in Tangiers, which is not bad. I would have loved to be trapped in your garden. How did you feel spring also in your 3 months in La Vieille Montagne?
Okay, spring was, this year also in Morocco, spring was absolutely wonderful. And for me, what was interesting, the virus made me think a lot about how indifferent nature is and about how important human relationships are. And as it's something I think about gardens, in fact, every night in Rohuna, in Tangier, I was speaking with the chaps working with me in Rohuna and asking them news about the garden and about what was happening and about their health, because I was very worried for them being in a poor, isolated village and getting sick. And the sweetness and those long descriptions of the garden made by these Moroccan young peasants, who are my friends, made me understand even more how important the relationship between men, between people, is in a garden, and made me realize that I really do care more about that, about being together, than about the flowers coming out. And for me, that was something already in my mind, because I always think that the importance of a garden is the energy of the people involved in it. And this experience of not being in my beautiful paradise, being aware, but reading and hearing about my paradise through the words of my friends, having this every night, this description of what was going on, made me understand even more about how important to be with my friends is. And I was missing them very much. And strange enough, I was missing my people more than my plants.
Well, I think, Umberto, that your people are one of your best plants. I mean, in a wonderful way. I mean, they've grown, I think, with you in your garden, no? They've become to love your garden. You've given them a great sensibility, and they're part of your garden. I mean, your garden without your people. I was seduced. When I visited Umberto's garden, the village was so enthusiastic. They met us in such a way. They cooked for us. Everybody was involved, and it was as exciting as to see your garden. So I think a garden is such an ephemeral thing that you need people to be enthusiastic and love it and to make it continue in time. And you've really, really made these people who love you and you love them to adore your garden. So I was going to ask you many other things, but I think we're going to go to Rohuna. So Umberto and Ngoc, the first thing of all, when did you decide to make, that Ngoc would make the photos of Rohuna? And Ngoc, tell us your experience. I imagine you went several times to capture this wonderful paradise in different times of the year. Tell us your experience. First, how your friendship started and when you thought about working on this project together. Umberto, if you start, and then Ngoc. Well, ladies first, sorry. Ngoc, so how many times did you go to Morocco to make the Rohuna, to do your shooting?
So I went over 4 years, I think, many times in all different seasons. I've lost track of actually how many times I went, but I think the first time that I went the first time in May. Umberto, I went to photograph my book in Tangiers, and Umberto said to me, "Oh, I have a little place in the countryside I'd like to show you." And so we drove out for lunch, and it was completely enchanting. It was in May, and everything was full. And we had lunch, and we sat under a fig tree overlooking the ocean. And Umberto said, "Oh, would you like to work on this book with me? Because I like to make a book of this place." And I said, "Yes." And at that point, I had only met Umberto for a few days, and I had no idea what this would involve. And but I was enchanted, and I said yes. And I went back in November of that year, and it was beautiful in a different way. It was the fall, and things had died down a lot, and the trees were bare. And I remember photographing the fig tree, the one that we sat under, on an early morning. And it was so beautiful, the landscape, because of everything was bare. You could really see the landscape. And it was something that I really fell in love with. There was such a different feeling and energy, and I felt really at peace in this place. And had this most amazing experience with it. And then the next day, because in Rohuna there was no internet service, we were cut off from the world, so that kind of added to the whole atmosphere of the place, that you felt like you were removed from the world in a way. And we found out the next day that there had been these terrible terrorist attacks in Paris. And that sort of put it kind of in a different perspective for me, that it made the beauty of this place even more poignant and more special in some ways, that we have to, that I was given this chance to see this beauty in such a cruel world, and so it was that sort of made me appreciate the place much more. And so every time I went back, I always had that special feeling of being in that landscape and being in that special place. And so many mornings when I'm there and I had the whole place to myself, I just felt like that was the world to me.
Fantastic.
And
I
so
imagine you produced many pictures. So, Umberto, was it difficult to decide between both of you which ones you would publish? Because I imagine they came out these fantastic photos, which must have been difficult to make a selection, no?
I couldn't decide anything. I didn't decide anything because Ngoc was in charge. I mean, for me, it would have been impossible to decide because I would have done a book of 10,000 pages. I think her picture is wonderful. I mean, no, the thing is that when we met, Ngoc came to Tangiers with a wonderful friend we have called Deborah Needleman. And Deborah is a friend of Ngoc, and she was helping Ngoc to find the people for, to meet me for doing this book in Bloom, which is a wonderful book. And I remember, I never forget Ngoc taking a picture in the garden, in a little corner of the garden, which I love, but I didn't think anybody else could have see it or love it. And the picture of Ngoc was so stunning, so magical, so unbelievable. She could see so much. She could see it. And so I remember when I asked her to come to Rohuna, I already had in my mind that I wanted to ask her to help me with the book, of course. And when I dared asking her, then I saw the way she moves in the garden, because she always carries her very heavy camera. She does it all by herself. She becomes almost invisible. She disappears in the garden. And when she takes the pictures, it's like as if she's part of the garden. If she doesn't see the garden from outside, she's part of it. And so, of course, the pictures they have no violence. They don't even have a point of view. They breathe the atmosphere. It's not an eye. It's a body inside a bigger body. I don't know how to explain. And I was thrilled when she accepted, because I immediately saw that she was the only person I could completely, more than trust, I could completely be happy with doing this thing. And she showed me thousands, hundreds of pictures, and I could never choose one, or I could never, because I trusted her entirely. I mean, I think what I try and do with the words about my garden, Ngoc does it in a better way with the images, and I trust her entirely. I mean, I never had the idea of saying, no, please put also this picture or take away this picture. I mean, it was her thing. I think it's her book. I just wrote a small text and the captions. I mean, that's it.
No, but as you know, gardens are always evolving. So in a way, I could have carried on taking pictures forever, and this book could never be finished. But of course, we had to put a stop to it. But yeah, the garden is always evolving. So I can carry on taking pictures of the garden forever for the rest of my life.
No, I understand it, and it's always in movement. And Umberto, tell us about the project, the actual project, the future project. Gardens, nature, we have to look after them, we have to cherish them. They're ephemeral. So what you've created, what I've seen, is a community who loves your garden. They feel it's their garden, and it's their garden. They've done it with you. And that's very, very important for us, nature lovers and garden lovers, that everybody has to get involved. But it's like a child. You're always worried what will become of it once you're not there. So tell us the project of what you'd like to do, and then we'd like to talk about also future projects. what would you like to do? And I imagine during these times for the villages has been hard. It's been very hard for the economy in Morocco because life has stopped and many people live of their everyday going out into the street and selling. So, I mean, what's your reflection? Has your ideas changed of what will become or what would you like to do?
So I have two sort of projects at the moment. One is let's say my professional projects are like writing. I'm writing a book, and then I want to do one more book with Ngoc about the Tangier house and garden. But connecting to Rohuna, what I want to do and what it's my due to do is to put together this foundation, because as the garden now it's a very important thing in the economical life of the village, because thanks to the money of the visitors we can do lots of things. We pay two gentlemen that clean up the old garden and clean up the old valley. Now we don't have plastic anymore. Everything is pristine. The village is also clean. These people are not obliged to live in the dust anymore. And also we pay for emergency chirurgical operation, and when somebody needs to see a doctor, we can pay for the doctor. And in the meantime, we have many ateliers, one of garden furniture, one of toys. The little girls do dolls and selling, and we do exhibitions of those things and selling them. We get enough money for helping the children to go to school. And so all that has to continue even after us, when Stéphane or me, we will not be here anymore. Stéphane is my partner, Stéphane Janson, the fashion designer. And so we have to do a foundation. We have to do a foundation because we want the thing to go on after our death, because the meaning of this garden is that we saved during 20 years all the plants were threatened by the development in northern Morocco, by the building, by the insane way of doing roads and marinas and golf and polos fields where forests and fields were. So having rescued all these plants, all these autochthonous flora, I think it's somehow wonderful. It really ends up the circle, that through that a village can live, the people of a village can have a better life, the life can improve, and they can study, they can live in a clean place, they can, we have done a little school also in Rohuna, which now can't happen because of the epidemic. And it's very important. We have just started something, which is a small, big thing, and all this has to go on. So we have to ask visitors to come back because they've stopped coming at the moment because of the virus. We have to entertain them. We have to show the garden. When you say you had many articles on the press, I'm very glad. Not certainly for my narcissism, but because it's very important that people know about Rohuna. It's very important that people come and see us, because if they come and see us, they give us some money, the money of the ticket. And because of this money, thanks to this money, we can do all the things in the village we are doing. And we are now doing with unbelievable difficulties because we don't have any income at the moment. And I know we can keep on going till more or less January. And then it will be hard, but I still collect money, I ask friends to help and so on, because we have a major engagement towards those people which are mostly very young, and it's an enormous responsibility. And somehow it's something I'm very proud of, because to have done all this thanks to the wild plants which were destroyed in a place, I think it's a very good thing.
No, well, I think after your talk today and after people reading your books, you'll have to do a very good planning, because everybody will want to go. Next spring, I want to see spring in Rohuna, because it must be. I want to see the iris. We've got the same iris in our garden in Toledo, and they're magnificent. And in Spain also, they've been disappearing. And Umberto has been going all around Morocco, especially around Tangiers, collecting bulbs, and has recuperated this Iris digitalis, which is fabulous. And I have to see that in bloom. So that will be fantastic. Are you still expanding the garden, Umberto? Because I know you're like Jackson Pollock, you get bigger and bigger, and you've always got an eye on the next hill, or do you think still of expanding?
Yeah, we are expanding a lot the garden because we have now a valley next door, and in this valley we have planted like few acres of Iris tingitana, and then we got to the little tiny little river which is down at the bottom, and now we are going up. And so also up we are planting lots of bulbs, and we are planting as always arbutus, viburnum tinus, and the Quercus suber, because we like to plant all the plants which are destroyed, which are killed by the roads, and unfortunately that still goes on. I mean, actually at the moment I am not doing much, but I plan to go down soon, to start again, because as you know, it's a big garden, Rohuna, and there are always millions of things to be done. And of course, I would love it with the time to become a big conservatory, and I would love it to be like a little natural park when Moroccan children of the future will be able to see the flowers of their area, which don't exist anymore apart of there. And so there's a lot to be done, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a shame that you weren't able to make it. I mean, Umberto and Ngoc really tried to come, but if Umberto would have come, he would have had to have quarantine back in Milano, and Ngoc couldn't get out from New York. But hopefully another year they'll come to the Hay Festival. We've got 3 gardens, lovely gardens in the Hay. One is a garden of Felix Ortiz, and there's a Colombian artist called Alberto Baraya who's putting plastic flowers in nurseries in the garden, which is the idea that our children, if we don't look after nature, they won't know flowers only by the plastic flowers of the Chinese shops. So that's, I think, your garden is so important, especially for Morocco and for us Mediterraneans, to see all the species which have been disappearing and you've been able to rescue. And not only the species, but also the nature around the flowers. I mean, tell them how you've rescued thousands of frogs and thousands of animals. No, that's also, you've been rescuing animals around your garden, and your garden has also become not only for the plants, but for the living nature.
Well, you know, it's quite simple. We have been going to Tangiers for nearly 40 years. And when we arrived in Tangiers, there were 150,000 inhabitants, and now there are more than 1 million. So the area where we are living, was like in the countryside, and Tangiers was a small enchanted village. Now, for many reasons, it has become a big city, and so imagine all the disaster, which all that is for frogs, for toads, for snakes, for birds, and so what we try and do is we try and save them as much as we can. In Rohuna, we are lucky because we have lots of snakes, for instance. We have even viper of Lataste, which is the only deadly viper living in northern Morocco, which is a rare, beautiful snake. And the chaps working with me at the beginning were scared of all those animals, and now they've learned how to respect them, how to live with them. And I think all that is very, very important. And frogs, I think frogs are a delight in the garden. Many times in Tangiers at around 5, 6, which is when the boring people come for drinks, you can't even talk to them. You can't even hear them because the noise of frogs, the song of frogs is so loud, so strong. And so they're even a big help in our social life, frogs. But yes, I love all that. I love all that since I'm a child. And I think I'm very lucky to be able to help all these wonderful creatures and to live surrounded by them in a world who doesn't respect them and who doesn't understand how important they are in daily life, even in the culture of man. I think the culture of man without frogs would be, I'm not only thinking about Aristophanes now, but it would be much sadder and much poorer to live in a world with no frogs. And so as I like happiness, I try and live amongst as many frogs as possible.
Well, you've got a concert, I know, every night. No, you've got a wonderful, wonderful concerts in Rohuna, frog concerts.
Yeah.
So, Umberto and Ngoc, tell us about your next project together, about a new book of, on your garden on La Vieille Montagne, or is it on gardens of Tangiers?
My idea is not only on the garden of Tangier, but on the house and the garden and the collections, because in the 40 years living in Tangier, with lots of difficulties, but I put together a collection of all the things who men did in Tangier, more or less from Paleolithical time to the Beat generation, let's say, in the 60s. And so this means stones, means tiles, means potteries, fabrics, carpets, lots of things. And as my dream is that all that one day becomes like a little museum, because in Tangier there's not a museum devoted to the town, to the history of town, and is the artistic production of town. I'm trying and write a text organizing the different collections, the textiles, the carpets, the tiles, the old Moroccan tiles, and the plants, the big collection of begonias we have in the gardens, of ferns, because thanks to the help of a botanist, a Belgian botanist called Bernard Dogimont, who has been living with us now for nearly 5 years, we have also add thousands of species to the collection in the garden. So I think it would be very nice to produce a book. Tangier has changed, but all these witnesses of a little bit of the history of the town, which is a very rich history through Phoenician, Carthaginians, Roman, Vandalians, Arab, Spaniards, English, Portuguese, and so to have all the artifacts of all these people living in the same area through the centuries would be, and to show it to the public, would be a nice way to introduce people to this new town, which now looks a little bit anonymous, but has a very, very big soul, a very deep soul, has many layers of history. And for the garden, it's a main thing. All the species, all the collections, to show them. And this is a book I would love to do with Ngoc now.
Fantastic. Also, from the botanical point of view, do you think of doing something to have a sort of a botanical guide of both your gardens?
I think more at the moment, as all the species in the Rohuna's garden. In fact, we have this list in the book we did with Ngoc, and no, now I think to make more a list of all the species growing in Tangier, because Tangier somehow is a mixture. It's not only autochthonous species, but lots of subtropical, Mediterranean, and also plants coming from many places, which anyway have been part of the Tangier gardening for centuries, because the French, the Englishmen, the German, who are used to go to Tangier, have taken lots of foreign species into Tangier. So the Tangerine garden is historically a very cosmopolitan garden. And I think to have all that in a book would be a good guide for the newcomers to Tangier, or for the tourists coming to Tangier, or for the people who don't know much about Tangier. And even we have people coming and say, oh, we thought there was a desert in Tangier, or Tangier is a very green place, surrounded by mountains, surrounded by the mountains of the Jubala, the Berbers living there. And I think to show all that, to be witness of all that, of the Jubala culture and so on, would be very important. It's something that's never been done, and Tangier and the people around Tangier deserve it.
I think it's a wonderful project. So you'll be starting it soon, Ngoc, the moment you can get out of New York. Do you see yourself going to Tangiers?
Well, we were just speaking earlier, and we hope to do it in spring. Hopefully the pandemic will be under control then, and we can travel safely, and it will be a nice season to be there and a good start.
No, it's lovely. The gardens are lovely. You've got that wonderful climate. And Ngoc, and what other projects are you involved in at the moment with your wonderful photography?
So at the moment, I have several things. I'm doing a book myself on roses, and that's going to be sort of a long-term project, because I was supposed to start this spring and everything came to a halt. But that's fine. I think I'd like to take my time on that, because I love Umberto. One thing that he taught me was to look at flowers through history. And so I'm very fascinated with the history of the roses, which is a very ancient one. And so I'd like to take my time on that, maybe work on it the next few years. But in the meantime, I have a project that that's been proposed to me. It wasn't my idea, but a publisher approached me to do a book on interesting green spaces in New York City, 50 places of my own choosing. So it's a fantastic project for this time. It allows me to explore the city, to go to a lot of places that I haven't been to, even though I've lived here for 30 years. So it's very exciting. I try to explore as many places as possible. From New York is actually very, very rich in green spaces. There's anything from the natural landscape, beaches. There's beautiful, actually, national parks along the coast of New York City, and also parks and small, vast pocket parks, which are like small, tiny triangles and corners, community gardens, and what's called privately owned spaces that are public. And I discovered that the Ford Foundation has this most beautiful atrium, planted atrium, right in the middle of Midtown. So there are all these incredible green spaces, landscapes within the city. So that will be my
So it's going
project.
to be wonderful to visit New York, but behind the scene, thanks to you.
Yes.
Secret
Yes.
places. Eh?
Yes.
Well, going back to Morocco and also to Spain, I mean, Umberto, for the public, speaks perfect Spanish, loves Spain, knows Spain much better than many Spaniards. And of course, Spain and Morocco, we have this link, especially on all the Spanish Muslim gardens. And with Ngoc earlier of this conversation, we were talking about that she has to visit Spain, especially southern Spain, from Toledo downwards, because we've got roses, and the Muslims also, they loved cultivating roses. And we've got, we were talking about the famous Santa Casilda, which is how I met Umberto through a mutual friend, which is Casilda. She's very nice, but she's not a Santa. And she's the one of the miracle of the roses. So I think it would be also very interesting for you to visit the roses and the Hispano-Moresque gardens now that you're so involved with Morocco. And maybe a project would come up also in Spain. Well, we've only got a few minutes left, and what I'd like to do, Umberto, because I mean, I've fallen head over heels by the spirit of your garden. The Jenny's Lockis has totally, I mean, conquered me. I've been twice. You were never there. Bernard was there, who was fantastic and is passionate about the garden. And I think it's a role model for many people of how you can save a place, you can save nature, and you can get people involved. So I would like that the public here would listen to your last words. I would love you, when this is over, we could facilitate to visit Rohuna for Spaniards to go to Tangiers. It's easy, it's by the ferry boat, It's a 45-minute flight from Madrid. You've got very cheap flights. And to visit this place, I think there's a turning point of, I think we've all learned with this pandemic to look at nature in another way, look at human beings and the joy of being with them in another way. We're all longing to hug and kiss and meet people more. So, Umberto, would you be happy if we would organize through the Hay Festival some visits and some to your garden? And because I think mouth to ear is the most important thing in life. It's better than Instagram. You start going and people will spread the word, and it's a way of making your garden sustainable.
Seguramente me encantaría, yo os espero. It's the reason of existing of this garden is to share it with people.
Precisamente la razón de que exista este jardín es que la gente venga.
And os espero y estar juntos en un jardín es da un sentido al jardín. Yo siempre
Visit a garden together, then
to share a garden.
that's what I always said.
A garden is not done for solitude. A long walk is done for solitude, but a garden is to share, is estar juntos, es mirar juntos, es aprender.
But it's about sharing, being in a garden, being surprised by the place, and especially for the people who work there and who knows the garden. Maybe they don't know the things by name, but they know what the things are physically, materially, because they've been there, they've related to it from the very beginning. So to share this garden with people who come and see it for the first time is absolutely wonderful for me. I would love you to come and visit. I would really be delighted. Yes, this idea of having a sustainable garden and having also the commitment and involvement of the villagers is in the community. Bueno, entonces, Humberto, ¿cuál es?
Not only your book on your garden in Tangiers, any other project in mind?
Yes, I've started writing a book, which is all, again, about Rohuna, about all the difficulties, the financial. It's a funny book. I want to make people laugh. And it's about how difficult it's to get enough money for keeping the project running. So having to go to Marrakesh and work for some ghastly Saudi and meeting them at the end are not ghastly at all. They're very funny. And meeting the Bulgarian people in charge and working for very pretentious French people. And I mean, to do all the things a poor gardener has to do for meeting all these strange people to keep on going in a place like Rohuna, or when people arrive and there's nothing to eat, or so suddenly we have to go and kill 2 chickens because they're very pretentious, grand Englishmen, and we have to pretend that we always have wonderful lunches and to charge them more money. And in fact, we usually eat 1 egg. We are 6 people eating 1 egg. So, I mean, I just want to make people laughing about, and I'm lucky because I have a very good title for this book, which is Al Verde, which means on the green, because in Italian, al verde, which means to the green, so it evokes nature, means in the meantime, empty pockets. So al verde means I have no money in my pockets, I have no money at all. So my next literary book is going to be called Al Verde. No sé cómo se puede traducir en español, pero in Italian it's I'm writing Al Verde.
Es muy divertido el doble sentido. Bueno. With us, it's 5:30 in the morning for you, and it's terribly late. But I hope you go back to sleep. As I knew, you got up very early to picture Rohuna at the crack of dawn. I said, well, she's a photographer. She knows what's to hunt for beauty. That you have to get up very early to get the right light. And Umberto, thank you very much. Umberto had with Stefan. Those of you who came yesterday to visit, to listen to Stefan with Joanna Bonnet. It was a wonderful conversation. They had a nice weekend, and the internet wasn't very good there, so they stayed in Milano to be able to talk with us. Well, I hope we can welcome you next year at the Hay Festival, and we can do an exhibition of all the wonderful crafts that are done in Rohuna. I'm a fan of the dolls. And of your work, Ngoc, because at the Hay Festival, we're always very involved with nature, and there's always exhibitions around nature. So thank you very, very much for your presence. Thank you, the public, for coming, and we hope to see you soon. And I'm sure you have new fans that will all appear in Rohuna. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Yes.
I'm sorry this year with COVID. I mean, first of all, thanks for coming and making culture, as I say, in times of war, of times of uncertainty. The public here have been very brave to come. Other years at Hay, there's a wonderful conversations with the public afterwards. This year, so as you can't pass on the mic, they're not done. But maybe one question that I can translate to Ngoc or to Umberto. Has anybody in the public have a question? Yes, I can see someone in the darkness. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Tenéis alguien que les gustaría preguntarle a Umberto o a Ngoc en concreto? ¿No? Bueno, pues espero que podáis visitar Rohuna. Os recomiendo los libros, tanto de Ngoc como de Umberto. Tiene un sentido de humor desternillante, te mueres de risa. And Umberto, as I told you, my new brother-in-law, who's an expert in frogs.
Yo ya dije, tengo un familiar que es un experto en batracios.
The encounter. I'll take him to Rohuna to see your frogs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias.